And I've been beating the drum on this for the last, 15 years, and particularly in the last 4 years since retiring from the technology sector, at least full time, and focusing on the national security element, really warning about the rise of China, warning about what I believe is a new Cold War with China that we're engaged in, that we absolutely have to win. It was a country where I was born and know very well, and have watched Putin very closely over the years. And I became convinced in December of 2021, and I came out publicly at the time and said, this guy is going to invade Ukraine before the end of this winter, about 3 months before the invasion took place. I was one of the first geopolitical analysts to do so. And the causes, the reasons that convinced me for why he was going to invade Ukraine, I realized were completely transferable to the Indo-Pacific. And that's when I really started writing the book, because I think that we are on a path to China trying to invade Taiwan in the next 48 years. I believe 2028 through 2032 is going to be an incredibly dangerous period. And the implications of that for the United States, I think, are completely unappreciated by much of the American public. The stakes are way, way higher than Ukraine. Taiwan matters a lot more to us than Ukraine does, for a huge number of reasons, both hardcore national security and power projection, but also economic reasons, because Taiwan, of course, is the epicenter of microelectronics and chips manufacturing, which drives the modern economy. And letting China either destroy it or even worse, take over it, is going to be absolutely devastating to America and our own economic security. So for all those and many other reasons, I believe that we are a world on the brink, as the book calls it. But unlike Russia and Ukraine, I think it's not too late to try to deter it, because invading Taiwan is a very, very difficult proposition. And this island truly is a natural fortress, and one of the worst places you can think of invading. Of course, Chinese have been focused on this singular mission for the last 40 years. The military has been. And we know now from the U.S. intelligence community estimates that have been publicized that the President Xi has given the order to the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, to be ready for invasion by 2027. Doesn't mean that he will invade in 27. I think actually 27 itself is very unlikely for the invasion to take place, but sometime afterward, I think he may very well do it.
What is it that you were seeing about Putin in Russia that led you to be able to call it so early, before other people were paying attention?
So beyond the obvious factors, and I was watching this buildup on the borders of Ukraine that was taking place, we've had other military buildups that he's undertaken both earlier that year and even in early 2021, but also in years prior. But this was done on a totally different scale. But then looking at his rhetoric, looking at what was happening in Russia, I realized that there were 5 factors that would drive him to do that. The first one was history and his own distorted view of history, and he's written extensively on that, including about 6 months before he invaded in July of 2021, when he basically wrote this long, almost PhD-style essay on why Ukraine is not a country and has always belonged to Russia. And you saw that even in his Tucker Carlson interview, where he went on for 30 minutes talking about what happened in the 800s and so forth. But he's very much convinced that this is a mistake of history to have allowed Ukraine to declare independence, and it needs to be corrected.
It was impressive on Tucker Carlson. Believe the man, not believe the man. He went on a pretty impressive rant.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Tucker, I think, thought he was filibustering, but I don't think so. He was very convinced of his arguments,
Yes.
and he wanted to lay it out there for the world to see. And he's done it not just on his show, but in other fora as well. The second one is destiny, that he believes it is Russia's destiny, but also his own personal destiny, because he sees himself as the new Peter the Great that expanded the Russian Empire, created the city of St. Petersburg that, of course, Putin hails from. To expand the Russian Empire, or at least restore it to some of its former glory. And Ukraine has always been that vital piece of the Russian Empire, in his view, the breadbasket, the buffer state that protects Russia against invasions, and that this was his time, right? And the timing is really matters here, because Putin is now in his 70s, early 70s. So he's looking at the last potentially decade of his power, both his mortality as well as hold on power, and very keenly aware of his own legacy and the need to establish that. The third one is security. And, there's a lot of people that debate how much NATO expansion caused this war or didn't cause this war, and people sort of taking very radical position on both sides that it was either the singular cause or had no role to play whatsoever. I'm in the middle on this, that I think that it's wrong to say that it had no role to play whatsoever. It's also wrong to say that it was the only thing that caused it. And the reason is that first, for the most basic reasons, that Putin does want to control Ukraine. And if Ukraine is a part of NATO, it eliminates that optionality for him to invade it and control it, right? Because now you would be confronting NATO. So, on that premise alone, that Ukraine joining NATO would prevent him from controlling the country, he was opposed to the NATO expansion to Ukraine. But also, there are legitimate security concerns, historic security concerns that Russia has had with having potential adversarial military alliances on its border. Russia has been invaded, obviously, numerous times through its history: Napoleon, Hitler, Teutonic Knights, Polish invading forces, and the like. And many of those invasions have gone through Ukraine on the path to Moscow. And Ukraine has always served as a critical buffer state to give them time to mobilize and protect the capital, at least against Hitler. They failed in the case of Napoleon. But that time to mobilize and having that strategic depth was always essential for Russia's security. So I believe for both offensive and defensive reasons, both the control of Ukraine reasons as well as projecting power into Europe. If you have Ukraine, it makes it a lot easier. And then defending it against other invasions, Ukraine served an important security role for Russia. And then geography, right? That it is this huge breadbasket. There's a lot of natural resources in Ukraine, particularly coal, some gas, a lot of agricultural production, and it's that critical buffer state as well. And the last piece that is probably the most important of the reasons why I think Putin wanted to invade Ukraine is ego, and that it's not enough for him to say that one day Russia will invade Ukraine, will control Ukraine. He wants to be the one to do it. He wants to get credit for it, to go down in the history books as a great Russian leader, to borrow a phrase, the guy that made Russia great again. He's really believing that, right? And when you look at those five reasons: history, destiny, security, geography, ego, all those same causes play out in the Indo-Pacific. Xi does not believe that Taiwan is a country. He believes it's his destiny and the Communist Party destiny to take Taiwan. Taiwan is essential for the security of China.